Network podcasts, live streams, and newsletters that cover the sport at every level on every platform. SiriusXM Channel 84.
You are watching the Field of 68. For the first time, our network brings you a live game broadcast. Mike Bothwell for the win! Oh!
This is Bruce Pearl.
Sean Shire.
Sean Miller. I love the Field of 68.
I listen to you guys every morning.
Are we still live?
UConn wasn't on my radar.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors, the only way to keep up with college basketball is through the Field of 68.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bear Down Ballers podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. Last night on Thanksgiving, the Arizona Wildcats defeated the Michigan State Spartans 74-68 in Palm Springs, but the Wildcats came out on top. I'm Ryan Wall here alongside Jordan Pollock once again. Jordan, how are you today? And what are your first thoughts on that fantastic victory last night?
I'm doing great. It was a great test for our early season Arizona Wildcats. A lot closer than I thought it'd be originally, but even Tommy Lloyd was talking about how hard it is, like no matter where you are in the year, to play against good blue blood programs with good head coaches. And the Spartans did not go away. It was really cool to even see them have a decent crowd in Palm Springs. It's a lot closer to Tucson than it is East Lansing. That's where Michigan State is, but it's as close to a blue blood program as you can get without winning more than one natty in the last 30 years. But Michigan State, they were very balanced scoring wise. I think that was one of the bigger positive things I saw. Walker still had 18 points, but outside of that, they were making tough shots throughout the whole day, and that was a pretty surprising thing. I thought Arizona's guards would kind of suffocate them and into taking really bad shots, to where they took hard shots. I wouldn't say a majority of them were really bad. They were low percentage shots, and they just were making a lot of them through the day in the mid-range, which is, I think, still a great sign. If you're gonna force a team to make some pretty crazy, ridiculous, I know a few of them they had to bank in, so it's a few of them are not great shots that they just went the other way. And so I saw a lot of positive things from Arizona's roster, and some of the different defensive things. I think we went small ball a lot in the second half, which probably was just kind of also the way the game was getting called, a decent amount of fouls. And Umar Ballo kind of seemed like he was pretty struggling quite a bit from the free throw line. Maybe that was a reason. And they were doing a lot of pick and rolls, and they probably just didn't feel super comfortable with Ballo. But Keshad Johnson, I think that's my player that I think just stepped up so much. And I think looking forward, I think to Purdue with Zach Edey, I think that is the lineup that you run to try to get him out of the game and try to get him in a spot that he doesn't like to do, because that's usually what you do against Purdue teams that have always at least one 7-foot guy that's really good. You go small and you try to spread him out and get him out of the paint. And Michigan State, I felt like, did that at times, trying to get Ballo out of the game, and Keshad Johnson had huge minutes down the stretch, as well as KJ Lewis, who was guarding bigger wings.
Yeah, you mentioned Keshad Johnson. He was unbelievable in this game. He was the Acrisure Classic MVP, the most valuable player for this game. He was just incredible. 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals, 2 blocks, 4 for 5 from the field, made a 3-pointer, was 100%, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. Those were big in this game. And to me, it just seems like, I keep harping on it every week here, Jordan, but it seems like he's just a man amongst boys out there. He's just so much more confident than other guys. And he really, at this point, obviously he's a veteran in college basketball. He just knows his spots really well. He knows where he can kind of impact the game, but not take too many chances. He likes to take a couple of those threes either in the corner or on the wing a game, but he doesn't force it. He takes ones that are wide open that fit in the flow of the offense. And to me, not just this game, but he's really arguably been the MVP of this Arizona team throughout the early season, the 6-0 start here. Because if they didn't have him, this team I think would be in trouble because they replaced him. We talked about this earlier in the year, but he replaced, Pac-12 Player of the Year in Azuolas
Mhm.
Tubelis, and that was a hard guy to replace. And you can argue even that he is impacting the game more than Azuolas Tubelis was on both ends of the floor by rebounding the ball at an elite level, by getting loose balls, blocking shots. And you mentioned looking ahead, I think the ability of Keshad Johnson to guard bigger players, that might be his best asset because that is an elite thing for this team to have. And he did all this while, juggling the 4 fouls in this game. He wasn't the only one. There was a couple other guys. Pelle Larsson even fouled out of this game. He only played 19
Mhm.
minutes, still had 10 points, 3 rebounds. But Jordan, the next thing I wanted to touch on is something I brought up before this game, and it was shooting percentage. Arizona 45.8% from the field. Michigan State was 40% from the field. And I said shooting percentage was going to be a big difference. Michigan State doesn't shoot it as well. They did shoot it a little bit better from 3-point land, still only 29% to Arizona's 26. But it seemed like when they had the momentum, in the second half, Arizona 10-point lead in the first. In the second, they came out to a big lead, but Arizona's defense did a good job of containing them in that second half. But yeah, what do you think about Arizona's ability to, get out to that 10-point lead at half and then in the second half come back when, it seemed like they were really struggling to find their offense?
Yeah, shooting wise, I think it's an important thing. I think it was right before halftime. I think Boswell hit his only two like back-to-back threes. And outside of that, he struggled quite a bit to find his 3-point shot. And I know some of them were pretty contested, heavily contested. I know Caleb loves this the step back he had. That was incredible. But I think a big thing that we talk about a lot is how we have or that this team has so many three-dimensional scorers, and especially with Keshad Johnson and towards down in the stretch and down in crunch time of the game, the ability of this team to get to the free throw line and to drive, especially when their shots aren't falling, definitely helped them a lot. And I think it was like around the 3 or 4 minute mark when Michigan State had all the momentum. They took the lead for the first time the entire game, and it felt very um, just like similar to a lot of teams over the past few years, especially when they get in tournament play of just like, okay, like nobody's scoring, what's gonna happen? And nobody's shooting well either. So it's like not like they have a guy that's in rhythm that they can just try to force feed the ball to. And they're getting downhill and they're getting to the basket and they're getting at the free throw line. And I thought Bradley even stepped up in a huge role and hit some really clutch shots. He hit that mid range right in the last 2 minutes to give them to retake that lead, and they didn't look back since then. And so just their ability to be able to get to the rim, get to the free throw line, I think was huge for them. Like 20 free throw attempts is pretty amazing, I feel like, and especially in college basketball and in a tournament style game, you don't really know how those games are going to be refed from game to game or day to day. And so I think that ability to continue to score even when their shots aren't falling like they have been, I think is very important and very good thing to see from this team of just how many different ways they can score whenever certain shots aren't falling.
Yeah, a couple guys you mentioned, Keshad Johnson had that big bucket to put him up one with 3 minutes left. And then arguably the biggest basket of this game was by the guy you mentioned, Jaden Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
He had a huge two. He stepped into that mid-range jump shot. A minute and 23 left. They went up five. And from there, the game was pretty wrapped up. KJ Lewis had his had his dunk
Yeah.
at the end, which he did in Catherine Indoor, kind of his, that's his thing. When the game's almost over, he gets the ball on a fast break, dunks it. So it seems like this team just overcomes adversity at every step because, like you mentioned, by no means this team did not shoot the ball well. From your backcourt, I know, Pella Larson is technically in that area, but your main two guards, starting Boswell and Love, when they combine to shoot the ball, that poorly, they were
Yeah.
they were five,
4-16.
yeah, 4 for 16 from deep,
From
and even
three.
first, 12 for 35 from the field. I mean, that's really bad. You're not going to win a lot of games when your main two guys, shoot like that. And that's why, I've been saying all season about Kylan Boswell's shot selection. I don't think his shot selection was all that good last night. He normally doesn't shoot 15 times. I like him shooting that much, but I would like him to kind of pick his spots a little better. But Caleb Love, you mentioned that at the end of the first half, that fadeaway 3-pointer buzzer beater was unbelievable. Mean mug the crowd. Just, I mean, that guy, big moments. He shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this game, as we mentioned, he didn't shoot the ball all that well, but still finished with 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and he did it while making a couple free throws down the stretch. And his defense down the stretch was really good. So I think that's a positive. This team, it doesn't seem like more often than not is going to shoot the lights out of the building, but they are going to always show up with their effort, their energy, and they're not going to quit. This is a team that, Tommy Lloyd said after the game, we have dogs, and they do have dogs on this team.
Definitely. That's a word that loves to be used nowadays. And I want to talk about Keshad Johnson again really quick and just the awesome impact that he has, even on the defensive side, of a guy that's undersized for his position, but he figure out ways to make huge impacts. 4 steals and 2 blocks is stellar. I think he even won the MVP of the one-off tournament game that they had yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And so deserving of that. 4 steals, 2 blocks, an assist, 10 rebounds, 13 points. He's the second leading scorer, but took literally a quarter of the shots that Caleb Love did and had only 4 less points. So Keshad Johnson's a big glue guy, and it's going to be a big reason this team, I think, can go pretty far in March.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a guy that they call many plays for. Like I said, he just kind of finds his spots, on the floor, pick and rolls, they find him in the corner for a 3 here and there. But I think he's a guy that needs to take more shots. I think they need to start to call more plays for Keshad Johnson because his ability to finish at the rim, even through contact, is elite. Yep. He is an elite finisher, and they need to use him more because we see he's so efficient. Even when he gets fouled, he's a good free throw shooter, and I think he's a guy they can lean on more and more. It's just going to require Caleb Love, which, to be fair, we're only 6 games in the year. I still think Caleb Love himself is finding that balance where, am I going to take 20 shots this night? Am I going to take 10? Am I okay if I get 5 or 7? So I think it's a balancing act, not just between Love, between all of them, because this is a group, once again, that is there isn't a set guy where, they have a guy that's going to get 18 to 20 like Tabelis did, like Matherin did. So I think they're all finding their groove on this team. But Pella Larson, was in foul trouble. That required KJ Lewis, Jaden Bradley to step in, and every time these guys step in, they make a huge impact, and they just seem like they're always, ready to compete in a big game. And these are guys that don't have a lot of experience. Jaden Bradley 1 year, KJ Lewis a freshman, and he made some big shots, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Bradley only had 4 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. He made that game-sealing victory shot down the stretch. What do you think about the guards off the bench in this game, Jordan?
Yeah, I think we're talking about some of these guys, and I think the big difference is like whether you can be a superstar without having a specific role in scoring, especially in basketball. Like we live in a time in especially the NBA where it's like you're not an all-star unless if you can score like 20 points a game. And I think that's one thing of just being an overall basketball fan that I love in this era where we have guys like Draymond Green that have never scored like over 15 points a game in their career, but he has like 3 all-star appearances. And that's just like something that doesn't happen. And I think being a superstar in your role when you're not scoring is so big. And especially like having Keshad Johnson and Krivas that are giving great minutes off the bench, KJ Lewis and Bradley, like if you're able to be a really great player in your role that isn't having to score at a high volume, I think that's great. Tubelis was that his first 2 years. Like he was like in a great post. And it was like we had Matherin that was easily our number 1 scorer. And then he would pretty much handle the ball and be a playmaker off that. Like when he had Dalen Terry slashing and Kerr just hitting threes that would get open. Like if you have guys on your court that don't need the ball like more than 5 times to at least get buckets and to have huge impacts in the game, either defensively or passing the ball, it's huge for your team because then at the end of the day, nobody's even getting mad about like not getting enough shots, not finding their exact spot because they're just contributing to win.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jordan. I totally agree. And yeah, that's why to me, this Arizona team works is because you have a bunch of guys that come from different backgrounds, different experience in college basketball, but they all come together. And even guys, and now they know their roles. Even guys like Ballo and Pella Larson, too, the veterans of this, in the Arizona system now. But they come from, Ballo's came from when he didn't play at all, like in Gonzaga, to playing very little his first year in Arizona and building his way up. So he knows that, if it's not his night or other guys are open, he's okay if he takes no shots. And that wasn't the case. He still had 10 points, but he knows that if it's not going that way, he doesn't need to force anything. And that's the beautiful thing about this team is it's not, we've seen other teams in college basketball in the NBA that they just have too many guys that want the ball, that shoot too much. And, that's never going to be the problem to me on this team. It's just, the thing that I keep saying is finding that perfect balance for this group.
Definitely. Completely agree. Selflessness can be a challenge, especially with how high competition can get. And this team, which is just so crazy to think about how quick this roster was constructed and felt like it was thrown together at times. And it's just so bizarre, like how well and how quickly they're all like gluing together and meshing together really well.
Yeah, and Jordan, bigger picture stuff after this game. I mean, my reactions, I thought Arizona should be the number one team after they beat Duke, a week ago.
A
But
lot has happened in the last few days,
yeah,
though.
a
A
lot of
lot has
yeah.
happened.
My second point is, the Maui, invitational did take place, and those teams all played three uh teams 3 days.
Mhm.
Purdue won that. I think they have a great case to be number one, but to me, neutral site games are different than going into. I mean, you could argue Duke could be the craziest environment to go in as a road team and to
I
beat that
completely
team,
agree. Yeah.
and then also beat. It's not like they haven't beat anyone else. Also beat, to me, another blue blood. And Michigan State, they've got a lot of scrutiny this year. They're 3-3 now, but people forget already. Just 2 weeks ago when this season started, they were number 4 in the country. A lot of
Mhm.
people thought they were going to go to the Final Four. They very well still could. We're still early in the year, but I don't think that should be diminished just because they're on that borderline of even being ranked next week. But I think Arizona should be the number one team in the country. Two two great wins, the best win in college basketball this season, without a doubt. But Jordan, something that I saw last night after the game, which pretty crazy, is the Wildcats are 27-1 in non-conference games under Tommy Lloyd throughout the last 3 years. They only lost, as we know, in 2021 to Tennessee. That was a brutal loss there. But some of these teams that Arizona have beat in the non-conference schedule, great programs: Wichita State, Michigan, Cincinnati, San Diego State, Creighton, and then this year Duke and Michigan State. They're 18-0 in the month of November under Tommy Lloyd in these 3 years. It's really just been unbelievable. It seems like every year, the last 3 years, to start the season, they're really unbeatable. And, it might sound easy when you schedule not great opponents, and Arizona still has that a little bit, but they also sprinkle in the big time matchups. And it's really just unbelievable because each year, as we know, Tommy Lloyd has reshaped this roster. And as we
Mhm.
know, it's hard to build that chemistry.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this being his third year, I think one thing that's important, usually your first year in the college basketball world, you don't really have really much control of your first year schedule, especially because you usually get your job around, I think Tommy was hired around April or May. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, like your early season slate of like tournaments, non-conference games are usually filled by then. And so this year, especially, like this is the year where we're not like in a big tournament, but we're having a lot of these quick one-off written one-off like good matchup games. And so this year and last year, the ones that Tommy Lloyd's been scheduling, and they've had some of the more premier matchups, which has been really cool to see how Tommy has purposefully done this early in the season. And they've been super successful at it. So I don't see this team slowing down, especially Tommy Lloyd was slowing down with some of the scheduling that he's been doing. And I know with the Duke game and the Wisconsin game, those are home and home series for next year too. So it'll be interesting to see if they even add somebody else. I would feel like, because I know they're in Maui next, or not in Maui, but the Bahamas for Battle of Atlantis. But I'd be curious to see if maybe he tries to throw in another one-off game, like at another tournament somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this year, it almost, when I saw the matchups that he scheduled, I was almost a little surprised
Yeah.
just because, you normally have a couple. Last year, Arizona was in Maui, so that was a couple big games there that Arizona was in. but besides that, as I remember, I don't believe there was that many more, elite opponents. But this year, literally, I mean, there's 4 top 25 teams when they played them, plus, Wisconsin, who's always, really good. And then
Mhm.
also adding in Colgate, who they're going to play next weekend, who's a really good mid-major in that
Mhm.
league, and they make the tournament all the time. So yeah, they got a lot of big time matchups here in the coming weeks. But which one stands out to you the most, Jordan? Because the next 3 weeks, Arizona, it's kind of like a football schedule. Arizona plays every Saturday. They play December 2nd against Colgate, December 9th against Wisconsin, and December 16th is the biggest one of those. It's versus Purdue in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's considered a neutral site game, but basically a home game for Purdue.
I think I think the Purdue one, I think obviously is the main one that kind of sticks out just because Purdue's really the only team right now at all that has an argument to be ahead of us in the polls. Like if nothing surprising happens before then, like I think that'll be a 1-2 matchup pretty easily. And especially the fact that it's in Indianapolis, it's like two hours from West Lafayette. So it'll be interesting to see how if it is a home game for them, but Arizona travels well. But one thing I've talked to you about, and I'm going to be in Tucson for, is the Wisconsin Arizona matchup. And I think that only because of the last 2 matchups, which if Arizona wins even one of those games, we could be in a completely different place of the program because that would have meant Sean Miller would at least have one Final Four. And that's something that just avoided him the entire time. And you know me, like I'm from Wisconsin. Like I don't shy away from that. I love Wisconsin. I was actually at the last matchup in Staples Center in 2015, and Arizona hates Wisconsin for those games. So I'm gonna be very curious to see the reaction of having Wisconsin, even though literally none of the players like have anything remotely to do with any of those teams. Like Tommy Lloyd and none of the Arizona staff was even
Mm-hmm.
with Arizona at the time. Greg Gard's head coach. Greg Gard was a longtime assistant for Bo Ryan. So him and his top assistant, I think Cravencroft, I think is his name. They had a big thing to deal with Wisconsin back then. But outside of that, like there's not a ton of ties, but Arizona, like fans don't let up hatred very easily. So I think that's a really cool one that I'm really excited for, and I'm excited to be there in the building and kind of see how that game eternalizes. They've been so and so. They had a blowout loss to Providence last week, but the week before they played Tennessee like really tough, and Tennessee is one of the best defensive teams in college basketball. So I think depending on how that game goes, I think that could possibly be a really fun game, especially with just some of the passion and hatred that Arizona fans have for Wisconsin. But I also just want to say, as being a huge college football fan too, it is so amazing how in the college basketball world we have this sense of where teams don't have to play really elite talent like early in the season and play these crazy matchups and play really good teams, but they do it. They do it. And especially now we're getting late in the college football season where people are starting to look at matchups, and Alabama and Texas is going to be talked about, and how possibly there's a scenario where Alabama and Texas playing early in the season, which was a premier matchup, could possibly hurt one of them. And so I think it's just really awesome to see. And it's kind of always been that way. College
Mm-hmm.
basketball is just different in that way. And I love the parity that just exists in the college basketball sport, and how people aren't afraid to play like elite talent early in the year.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Jordan. We need more of that. We need
mhm,
more. We need more people, more teams to play the list of teams that I just mentioned that Tommy Lloyd has, scheduled and played the last couple years. Because that's, even if Arizona dropped one of these games against these ranked teams and these big, Power Five opponents, it's not a huge deal. Everyone's bound to
Definitely.
lose a couple games, and in the non-conference, it's important, but the conference schedule is more important because that starts in the coming months, in a couple weeks here. But before we go, Jordan, what do you think was the biggest takeaway, and that's sticking with you from this big 8-point victory or 6-point victory over Michigan State?
I think being able to respond to big runs, because there is at least 2 or 3 stretches where we had close to a double-digit lead, and Michigan State would take the air out of the building, take the momentum, and have big runs. And that's ultimately what the game of basketball is at the college and the NBA level, is just who can have more frequent runs and who can sustain them longer. And so the ability to end the runs and to keep scoring in the midst of having shooting droughts and having a hard time with your shot falling down is paramount, especially as we get later in the season into bigger games, because droughts can kill a season so quickly. And I think that's one thing the last few years that we've seen in March is a drought happened and it just would pile on. I know that Houston game, they had such a hard time overtaking any big run that Houston had and retaking a lead at all in that game.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's been the best overall asset and ability of this team. And to me, along with that, kind of a side thing, I've been most impressed. It seems like all these big games, obviously not the blowouts, those were pretty much set and so done early in the
Mm-hmm.
second half. But this is the second bigger game for Arizona this year. And in both of the games, when it gets to that 7-minute mark, 5 minute left in the game, that back end of the second half, it seems like the intensity level and the attention to detail by this Arizona team is just taken up a notch and is really just incredible. And they really focus in because they know that those are the most important moments. And a thing that I believe in this team, if Arizona does not win or does not play their best for the whole game, but wins and plays their best during those key moments, that's
Mm-hmm.
how you get the job done. That's how you win in March. And that's what they need to build. And just to see them to do this when we're in November, Jordan, this is really impressive stuff. And it just gives you a lot of hope for the later months, for the Pac-12 season, for March Madness. So yeah, this was a huge victory. Second win this season already against teams that were ranked inside the top 25. Second big win against a major Power 5 team. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to today's episode of Bear Down Ballers. I'm Ryan Wall. He's Jordan Pollock. Follow us on X at Bear Down AZ Pod. Follow the Field of